Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Faces and Heels, your podcast for professional wrestling here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is something different we're doing here on Faces and Heels. Normally, I do my TV and movie reviews over there on the concession stand channel of this network, but since this is a wrestling show, I decided to do it over here on Faces and Heels. And today we're going to review the new Netflix documentary series or reality TV show, however you want to categorize it, that's coming to us from the WWE Unreal. In this show, it follows several WWE performers as they prepare for their various matches and storylines and so on and so forth, and we get kind of a peek behind the curtain of the WWE. Notable appearances on this show: you have CM Punk, John Cena, who else? Charlotte Flair, Rhea Ripley, Cody Rhodes, and the list goes on. And of course, you have Paul Triple H Levesque spearheading this thing. And I must be honest, when they first announced this show, I was not mad, not upset, not disappointed, but I was kind of skeptical because I'm like, why are we pulling back the layers here? Why are we showing how the sausage is made, so to speak? And it got me kind of upset, to be honest with you, because look, I'm not a buffoon. I'm not an idiot. I know that this is scripted programming. Wrestling is predetermined matches. We know, well, we don't know, but they know the outcome of all the matches going into the event. And, it's all good. But I still lived on the fact that this is still a sport at the end of the day, because those performers are going between the ropes and they have to perform. This isn't a quote unquote TV show where you get multiple takes. You get one take. You get one shot at nailing it and selling it. And those performers have to nail it each and every time. Sometimes they don't, and that's the joy of watching professional wrestling. I don't care if it's WWE, AEW, TNA, whatever it is you watch or a big fan of, you're going to have those slip-ups. You're going to have botches in matches and stuff like that. I can live with that. I can live with fake punches and all this here. I've been watching this for over 40 years. I'm a huge fan of professional wrestling, in particular WWE. And so this show, peeling back the curtain and giving us an inside look of how things are ran, I already knew going in. I already knew what took place at Gorilla. I already knew that storylines were set up, especially the long form storytelling that they tell in WWE in some instances. Sometimes they throw stuff together, whether it's due to injury or whatever the case may be, or the crowd, the audience demands a certain thing and they have to pivot and go a different direction. This has happened a few times also, but for the most part, they know exactly what's going to take place long before it actually takes place. So with all that being said, I decided to check the show out. I said, okay, it's only 5 episodes. Let's dive into it. Let's see what this is all about. What are they really going to show? Are they really going to show everything, or are they going to cherry pick what is seen to everybody who watches this? And I must say, I enjoyed this show. This was a really good show. It really didn't show much, other than the fact that WWE is micromanaged to a T, man. I mean, everything is scoped out, particularly produced. I mean, from every little move, there's no I'm pretty sure there's ad-libbing, but it's very little ad-libbing. There's very little going off the rails when it comes to WWE. Whatever is produced, whatever is rehearsed, whatever is talked about with creative and Triple H and whoever else is in charge, all that is ran over by everybody. Everybody knows. There are some secrets that they do keep from everybody that only a tight knit group know, and I'll cover that in a couple of minutes. But they, for the most part, everything is tight, man, very tight, and that can be good, but that can also be horrible in a lot of instances. And for the most part, WWE, they've been doing this forever. They know what they're doing. Even when things kind of go off the rails, they know how to reel it back. And we got to see that as well. So all this show did to me was just let me know that WWE is a tightly ran ship. There are, there is little room for ad-libbing when it comes to putting on a show in the WWE. But there was 5 episodes. The first episode was entitled New Era, and that episode pretty much laid out the Raw premiere on Netflix, leading up to it, and the matches that took place, the promos that were happening on the show. I mean, everything that you would imagine when WWE puts on a big show, that's pretty much all they showed, and they wanted that Netflix premiere to be similar to a PLE. They wanted to be similar to a pay-per-view or even a WrestleMania in their eyes. But I could tell you, watching that premiere on Netflix, it was far from that. But it was a good, decent show. I always describe that show as non-canon because nothing on that show did anything to push a storyline going forward, with the exception of the CM Punk Seth Rollins match, that main event that night's Raw. But everything else was kind of non-canon to me, and I just took it to whereas it didn't count. But it was still a decent show, but it was good to watch that process and how they put that show together. Episode 2, which was called Push, and that was a behind the scenes of the writer's room and the creative team and how they book the Royal Rumble. And I was always curious about that. I was always, kind of intrigued by the concept of the Royal Rumble, because that's 30 men and women, for the women's Royal Rumble. But, one Rumble match consists of 30 participants. And I would imagine it's difficult to put on any multi-man match, whether it's a triple threat, a fatal four-way, or whatever, because there's a lot going on. And to have 30 people in the ring at the same time, which technically is never the full 30 in the ring at the same time, but even still, it's a lot of participants in one match, and how they put that together. And is it ad-libbed? Do we really get a free-for-all in a Royal Rumble? And until we get to the end, they just know that the final 4 is going to be these 4, and the rest are just free-for-all battles or whatever. But no, no, from 1 to 30, and every elimination is perfectly calculated. The eliminations and who eliminates them and who's going to be in the final 4 or whatever the case may be. All that is carefully planned out in the Royal Rumble. And in this episode, we got the reveal, which wasn't a shock, but we got the reveal that Triple H was the main one pushing Jey Uso, main event Jey Uso, for that big push, for him to win, or should I say eventually win, the heavyweight championship versus Gunther at WrestleMania. And we also got the return of Charlotte Flair and her coming back and entering the Royal Rumble and the Women's Royal Rumble and her journey coming back from injury. I will say this. I know they touch in on her a little bit more in episode 3 and 4, I believe, but I want to say this now while it's fresh in my mind. I grew a deeper respect for Charlotte Flair after watching this show. I always looked at Charlotte Flair as somebody, and like I said, this can all be scripted as well. You know, it can all be bull crap because we didn't really get to see any dirt, you know, from behind the scenes. That's my other knock about the show. We didn't see any arguments or disagreements or shenanigans going on. And we know anybody who has a job knows that you're going to have shenanigans at some point, but there was none on this show, which is crazy with all that testosterone that is floating around backstage, but whatever. But Charlotte Flair, from what she showed here, was a very relatable person. I guess that's the best way I can put it, because I always looked at her as, I know she has the queen persona. She's the daughter of Ric Flair, and you know, I always looked at her as somebody who will pull the Hogan card. You know, that's not going to work for me, brother. But when they talked about her and she was talking about her career up to this point, I really thought back. I was like, well, Charlotte Flair put over a lot of people in WWE, a lot of women. It wasn't like it hasn't been dominant. She's not doing the Mercedes Moné card over there in AEW where she's just burying every woman there. She is really putting over people, and she acknowledges that, and she really leans into that. You know, she wants to help these women get over because somebody helped her in the past. And I like, man, I can respect that because she did it. She did it at WrestleMania with Tiffany Stratton. And I thought that was cool, even though there was clear beef, clear beef between those two. But they worked together and they did it professionally. But in any event, yeah, I got to give a shout out to Charlotte Flair. But this was also a decent episode. We move on to episode 3, which was entitled Worth the Wait. And this was a behind the scenes showing Bianca Belair, Chelsea Green, once again, Charlotte Flair, as they deal with injuries and returning during the lead up to WrestleMania. And this was more of a female centric episode here, as you could tell. And I super enjoyed this because I enjoy the women more in WWE than I do the men. The women put it on, and as a matter of fact, Triple H says that on this show. I don't know if it was Bruce Pritchard or somebody he was talking to. No. It was Hurricane Helms he was talking to, and he was telling him about, man, the women kills it. I don't know if it was this episode or episode whichever one, but he tells him that. He like, the women always give it their all, and they always put on a killer show. Actually, I think it was the last episode, and he's right. You know, the women always go out like they got something to prove, and they don't. They really don't. I think they've proved it up to this point, but every single time they get a stage, they get an opportunity to show that they belong, they do it. And man, this episode, we got a deeper look into Bianca Belair and how she came up, and you know how she prepares for matches, and you know the hair whip. They put emphasis on her braid that she used as a weapon in the ring, and Chelsea Green, she got a lot of shine here in this episode, which was awesome because I'm a huge Chelsea Green fan. Because Chelsea Green can wrestle. I know that WWE uses her as a comic relief, as more of a comedic performer, and she does that well as well, but she can go. If you look at her old, like I remember seeing her on what was that, on the El Rey network, that Lucha Underground. I saw her on Lucha Underground, and she was a beast, man. I was like, man, why are they not using her like that here? you know, but we got to see her journey to become the first women's United States champion, and the heartbreak of her not performing at Survivor Series, which took place in her hometown, and and all this other good stuff. It was now this was probably the best episode to me because we really dove into some real stuff here. It was some real, I'm not going to say discourse or anger or anything, but it was real. This felt real. This episode felt super real to me. We got more with Charlotte Flair and everything like that. So this was my favorite episode out of the 5, episode 3. And that's not to say that the other ones weren't good. All of them were good. I actually sat down just to watch a couple of episodes a couple of nights ago. I said, okay, I'll watch a couple tonight and I'll finish it off tomorrow. I end up sitting there and watching all five episodes. I ain't go to bed till 2:00 to watch. I couldn't stop. I could not stop watching until I got to the end. Thank God it was only 5 episodes, or I would have been in trouble. But episode 4, which was entitled Heel Turn, and that showed the behind the scenes look of the second best heel turn in professional wrestling history with John Cena. The first being Hulk Hogan's heel turn at Bash at the Beach in WCW. What year that was? 99, 98, somewhere up in there. But anywho's, yeah, this was interesting too, because depending on the reports you read, leading up to this or immediately after this was a last minute thing that they decided to pivot and turn John Cena. They wanted to turn Cody, but we find out here that this always been in the works. Well, not always. It was kind of last minute, but it wasn't last minute. It was like a month or 2 before when they made this decision, and everybody was on board. And we got The Rock in this episode, Dwayne Johnson, and there's been a lot of stuff said about him. How he wasn't really on board with coming to the Elimination Chamber and doing this angle with Cody selling the soul and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, watching the episode, I was like, yeah, I can kind of see that he didn't look too enthusiastic about doing his angle, even though a lot of it was his idea. A lot of the stuff that took place was his team coming up with this, plot, and it was just abandoned. It's like, okay, we did it. That's it. And that's it. He didn't show up at WrestleMania. We haven't seen him since, but whatever. But I like that they kind of went in depth with that. The thing with the John Cena turn was it was good when it happened. I remember watching it when it happened. I was like, finally, after 20 years, we're finally getting heel John Cena. But heel John Cena hasn't worked for me. It hasn't. And I just watched SmackDown, leading up into Survivor Series, which takes place this weekend. It looks like he turned back babyface. So I guess they got the memo, like the heel turn ain't working. It worked for that night, and that was that. But anywho's, yeah, that's what we explored in episode 4. And the final episode was entitled WrestleMania, and this was a behind the scenes with the staff and with the performers as they prepare for WrestleMania 41. Once again, no shock, no surprises here. The only thing, well, not the only thing, but the most glaring thing that kind of got my attention in this episode was the CM Punk factor. I'm a huge CM Punk fan, and when he got emotional about finally main eventing WrestleMania, oh boy, I'm getting goosebumps now thinking about it. And for how he talked, like, this is all he ever wanted. All these years, that's all he ever wanted. Just remember, folks, think back to what was it? 2000 and whatever it was. When he was the champion. He was the actual WWE champion going into WrestleMania, and he didn't main event WrestleMania. That's the year that it was The Rock and somebody. I think it was The Rock and Cena, if I'm not mistaken. But he didn't WrestleMania. He didn't main event WrestleMania. Never. And he was the biggest star. And he's the biggest star now, still, after all these years. And he finally gets that opportunity. And no, he didn't win. He didn't go over. But that's all he wanted. That's all these guys want. And guys and girls. That's all they want. They just want the opportunity to shine. And it was also a good moment to see when they were in the writers' room and Triple H was talking to the writers and he was asking who should go over and this, that, and the third. And his choice was CM Punk. And if you know the history, which they touched in on, I think in episode 1, Triple H and CM Punk, how his first run, his being CM Punk, they didn't like each other. This is epic. This isn't breaking news. They didn't break the news on this show. Everybody knows that this was a thing. They couldn't stand each other. It was like, I don't know. I think they both were just stubborn. But now that they're older and more mature, they're able to work together. And for them to come to terms to the degree where they can actually work together and have a good working relationship, I would go as far to say great working relationship, is a testament to how you grow. And they grown as human beings, and it was fun to see that. It was really fun and emotional, man, and emotional. For Triple H to pull him to the side before he went out, and tell him that you've always been a main eventer. You know, you're CM Punk, and for CM Punk, in the most CM Punk way, say, "Yeah, I know." He's like, "Yeah, I know," but it means everything to me that you know that. And man, I'm telling you, it was almost Niagara Falls up in here, man. I was like, "Oh, bro, that touched me. That touched me deep there." But WrestleMania 41, it was a decent WrestleMania. I think the highlight of that show was the triple threat match between Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, and Io Sky. That was the best match of WrestleMania, and they really singled in on that on this show. They knew that. There was no other match that could match that match. And so it was cool to see how those women prepared for that. And it was also interesting to see that Rhea Ripley, no matter how over she is, no matter how big of a star she is, and she's probably the biggest star in WWE, that's male or female, but she still questions herself. You know, and it's like, wow, you do? You do? She is phenomenal. And to hear that, and for Triple H to encourage her, like, look, you see what you did out there? I mean, you are phenomenal. You are phenomenal. Just go have fun. And it's just a different tone now under Triple H. And I think this was the purpose of this show, to display the tone that this isn't Vince McMahon's WWE no longer. You know, this is Triple H's WWE. And it's not perfect by no stretch of the imagination. It's not perfect. I'm still, I don't know, man. They make me mad a lot. Not as much as when Vince was in charge, but Triple H still pisses me off a lot. He really does. I don't know. Like now with not WrestleMania, but SummerSlam coming up, I am not hyped up for SummerSlam, and this is the 2 nights. This is the first time it's going to be a 2-night SummerSlam and I am not excited at all. Because it was the build to this has been lame. The build to WrestleMania was lame, and all of the other PLEs. It's like he doesn't know how to build excitement. He knows how to build the stars. The matches are good. It isn't AEW levels boring and bad, but it's like y'all can do better than this. I know y'all can because you've done it. You've done it in the past and not too far ago. Just last year's WrestleMania 40 was epic. The lead up to that was epic. The storytelling was epic. The feud between CM Punk and Drew McIntyre was epic. That lasted for months. It's I don't know, man. It just lately it just feels lazy. It feels like, okay, let's have CM Punk fight Gunther for the title, and that's that. That was the bill. It's only been 2 weeks, and they're gonna fight at SummerSlam. It's like it just feels lazy. But when you watch this show and you see how meticulous they are, how much effort they put into all of these shows, even on Raw, like, where did this go? And that's what makes you question: is all of this scripted? Is this real? And I know there's some fakeness to it, but it's real for the most part. But they need to get better. They do need to get better. Still a fan, still gonna watch, but I'm tired of being mad. I'm tired of getting mad at these shows. But as far as WWE Unreal, which is on Netflix, I highly recommend it. I'm not going to give it a grade because it's a documentary. How do you grade a documentary? But it is a really good show. If you're a WWE fan, if you're a wrestling fan, period, I think you should check it out. It isn't a how the sausage is made all the way. We don't go step by step all the way through it. You get steps, but they don't go in depth. There's a lot of stuff that they really left out. A lot of stuff. So it's not no holds barred, everything out there on the table, sit down next to Triple H and watch him cook. It is still a lot of stuff that is behind the veil, if you will. But I did enjoy this, man. This was fun. And to explore these wrestlers who we are fans of and to get their perspective on a lot of things, really put things in a different light, how they look at it. You would think they will all be after the championship. They will all be after the belt, but they are not. That's not even their goal. Their goal is to entertain us. That's it. They just want to entertain us. And I my hats go off to them, and I highly recommend this show. They don't need to do any more of these. I hope this was a one and done thing. There's no need to go back to this well anymore. But that's just my humble opinion. Did you check out WWE Unreal, and what did you think of it? Or are you staying away from it because you don't want to see behind the curtain of WWE? I would love to know your thoughts. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and smash this like button if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to Faces and Heels here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of Netflix new documentary series WWE Unreal. I'll be back this weekend as I recap and react to the first ever 2-night SummerSlam this weekend. So my weekend is jam-packed and I'm here for it. Hopefully we'll get something exciting coming out of this SummerSlam, but we'll see this weekend. I'll check with y'all then. Y'all be cool. Peace.